Yeah, if any of you are happen to be asking, can students listen in on this? Absolutely. There's nothing on here that is going to be something they can't hear. It's just whether or not you want them to be part of the discussion. All right, I do have official Apple time is 3 o'clock, so we will go ahead and start. I know there are some still hopping on. A couple things I want to point out. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, at the very bottom, which probably not very many people now, at the very bottom of this screen with all the people is a chat. So if you click on that, it opens up a bar on the side of your computer. That's where we'll have, you can communicate with us, ask questions. There are also 3 links in there right now. The first one that you see, that Q&A, those are questions that were submitted when you signed up. Those have been answered and they're on that document. We will add additional questions that are brought up today to that document. So that'll be a live document and you can share that link with anybody. The other link is the opening plan that I sent last week. It's just another link to go to that reopening plan. I also added the technical specifications for Syllabus, the online or the remote learning platform. Some people asked about what devices does it use. So that'll answer those questions. And then the fourth one is a link for learning environments. Dr. Hare, who was on this call, Jana Craig Hare, our curriculum director, put that together to compare the remote and on-site hybrid options. So it's a good comparison tool. I don't want to spend really a lot of time talking about this because I need to be able to answer your questions. So I want you to, if you want to put it in the chat, if you want to unmute and ask the question, I want this to be your time so that you can get the questions answered that you need. We are planning on starting online enrollment next week. We're looking at Tuesday or Wednesday to open that up so we could start figuring out on our side which families are going to want to choose remote versus on-site, so we can start putting together some more final specific plans, how many students are going to be in person, getting classes put together, etc. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and let you guys ask questions, and then Dr. Hare and I will do our best to answer them. I will say we had a couple questions about Syllabus. So while we're waiting for some of you to maybe get your questions together, Dr. Hare has a quick demo of what that looks like for students when they sign in. Are you able to do that now, Jan, or do you still need more time for your video to load?
No, we're good. So
and would you also, can you click record?
Yes, I did.
And just so you know, we are recording this so the folks who can't make it are able to watch this. So it is being recorded. To say it up front. Okay, Jana, she'll show you the Syllabus real quick.
If there's any additional questions, post them in the chat, and then we'll add those to Dan's document that he started already on the FAQs. And I am going to share my screen with you. So you see. Okay, do you see the Syllabus screen? Dan, can you give me a thumbs up if you see that?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, awesome. So with that, let me get my password for I created a few student accounts in here. And so I'm going to log in. This is just a sample student account for a 4th grade student. So this is what students would see when they log in. This would be if they choose the remote option, remote learning, then they would get their content. So we've opted to purchase our content, lease our content basically from a Syllabus. They would still have a Baldwin teacher that's working with them, and their class meetings would still be with Baldwin students, but just the content would be through a Syllabus, and that's just to help them with the pacing of it. If they have struggles, and they get additional help on that without having to contact the teacher, even though the teacher sees if they're actually struggling on this. So what we would try to do is match up what they would normally get in the classroom with the content that a Syllabus provides. And there's a lot of content out there, but it would be the basic math, science, social studies, and ELA. Students could take 6 courses. So there are some other electives, which is kind of fun because then they could do like programming, or if they wanted to do like a Discover Spanish class or something else that we don't typically offer during the school day, they would have that option in the online remote learning piece of it. Let's log in. Let's just look at a math lesson real quick. It is a video-based system. So there's a video
Welcome to class. We are here in the Syllabus studio getting ready to learn math. Yes, I'm excited. Aren't you excited? There are so many things we can learn with math that will give us the ability to do things in our lives.
I'm going to pause and see if I can, oh, it doesn't let me skip ahead, which is kind of a nice thing from a student point of view. But basically, they do try to pull in some real life examples of how we would use math or how we would use any of the content areas. The content is presented one concept at a time, so students understand that concept before moving on to another concept. If we would look at, let me go back to the main screen here. There are lots of different learning objects in here, and that's just, it's a series of a video, then there's usually a problem set and some other type of activity, and then the new concept comes along, and that's another video. So it's just that cycle of going through your concept, your problems, and your videos. In the problems, students work through the problems, and there's usually like a 70% mastery, and if students get at least 70% of the problems correct, then they're accepted to have mastered that concept, and they move on to the next concept. If they don't get a 70% correct, then they actually have some other special lessons that walk them back through it to help them understand the concept a little bit better. So you can see there's a few different things here. The students can monitor their own progress on how they're doing for this, and this is a sample class that we just set up. If they get their special lessons and they have access to what those special lessons were. The other piece, I'm going to sign out of this real quick and log in as a teacher or as a parent. As a parent, one of the things we heard in the spring with the continuous learning is that I don't know what my students are doing or my child is doing. I don't know, where they're progressing. I don't know if they need help on things. This actually comes with a parent portal. So as a parent, I would log in, and here I have a student at every school. So I'm going to log in as my IC student, and I can actually see, okay, they're on place value and they're in progress. So they've actually been working on this. They haven't completed anything for these classes. I can look at their score report so I can see how they're doing in the class, their progress for the whole course, their student hours, so how much time they put in on each of the courses. So I can monitor that as well. That's each day of the week there. So I can see a month total and a year total. I can see a live monitor. So if my students are supposed to be working on this when I'm not with them and they're at daycare or whatever, I can see if they're actually doing their lessons. I can see if they're special lessons. I can also go in and look at a syllabus, and this will just show you, so here's 4th grade math. These are all the different learning objects that are there. And you kind of see this is a video. So here's an activity, here's another video. That first video that we looked at was like 3 minutes long. So we're not looking at really long videos or anything. There's an activity there, and then the problem. Now don't look at the screen here on this. I'm going to scroll to the bottom really fast. This is 4th grade math. There are 1,100 learning objects in there. So this is going to keep them busy for a while. There's a lot of concepts. There's a lot of content in here that, they're really going to get what they need at grade level. The other thing I've heard is just we missed so much with last spring. Are my kids going to have a learning gap? And actually the recommendation has been that we just put them in a syllabus at their grade level. And because of the special lessons, it actually fills that gap back in. So they're not missing any of the content that they should have received last spring. And maybe because of all the other circumstances, maybe they feel a little bit behind on that. So I'm going to go back up here and I'll sign out of the syllabus. If anyone wants to or has specific questions on it, or we want to go into that a little bit deeper, we can. I'll stop the share, go back to the chat, and see if there's more questions in there. See, Dan, I can make them ask questions.
Good. Yeah, there are quite a few, so I'll just go through them right now in the chat. So please keep putting them in there. And even if these
would you rather us be texting our questions or comments, or just doing them like this?
Either way, you have one, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick.
Sure.
I know that there were, since the at-home learning this past year was reactionary, and it had to be because it was a brand new environment. That there were some technical issues with regard to I know at least in my daughter's class where she would complete the work and it wouldn't be reflected on the teacher's end. I assume that, was it Acellus?
Yes.
Does this, from the get-go right now, does it seem to be a more robust system? Got a good track record with that kind of thing?
Jen, you want to take that one?
Sure. It is, it's more robust than what we could prepare on the fly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I get it.
different than what teachers will be asked to do this year.
Okay.
So this year, if you're in an on-site or hybrid, teachers will be expected to continue that learning piece that they would normally be doing in the classroom.
Yes, for William.
Got it.
So,
And then,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then real quick, and I think this was already addressed, and I apologize if this would have been answered if I would have just read a little more, but I think I heard that children, and this looks like Jenna had the same question, are they gonna be tethered to the screen for 6 hours a day?
No.
Oh, I certainly hope not.
Okay,
Um,
because I've been seeing that, bandied about.
When,
No.
when the remote option first came out, what the State Department of Education said is we want 360 minutes of learning from students.
Right.
And since then, we've been getting some clarification as to what does that mean, because our reaction too was that's way too much time on screen. So
Right.
As the parent, you're ultimately responsible for signing that log that says my kid learned 360 minutes. Now that
Right.
could be what we're learning is an average over a week's time. So it may not be all one day, it may be a little more the next day. And
Right.
anything they do that's something similar to what they would do in school should count. So
Okay.
if they are doing a physical activity, when they have PE in school, they have PE for 50 minutes.
Right.
When they have music for 50 minutes. So practicing an instrument or doing something, an art project that's not part of a Acellus can still count. Reading their book independently for 20 or 30 minutes. Those are all things that you can consider. I would even say application of something like if your kid is working on fractions and they go and they're making a recipe with something, that's an application of learning. So that those
Got it.
things can count. So we don't want you to think of it as they're tied to, they're sitting down at the computer and they're working nonstop for 6 hours, because they don't do that when they're at school either. So
Awesome.
that
All right.
helps.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
And on that, we would anticipate like each of those content subject areas that they had in Acellus, that would probably be about 20, 25 minutes of learning. So we're probably looking at maybe for a third grader, maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours on screen by the time you add in like a teacher meeting. So hopefully not all of that 6 hours is going to be an online, because that's not healthy for anyone.
So I'm going to go down the list in the chat. Some of you are answering each other's questions, which is great. So I'll skip over those. Class sizes we're hoping to have. So if everybody came back and chose on-site learning, which we know isn't going to happen, we would have between 22 and 24 between the 3 grade levels. So there's not a lot of difference. There's a question further on down about how many we anticipate. When we took the survey, when you guys took the survey in mid-June, it was about 8%, which would be roughly 10, 12 of our students. So that's not that many. But we also know the conditions have changed. You have a lot more information than you had back then. So I think our estimates going up probably into the at least double digits. But that's one of the reasons we want enrollment to open soon, so that we can get that information pretty accurately. There was a question, why was the AB schedule like this was not done for the BESIC? Again, we looked at the parent and staff surveys, and the question about what do you want it to look like? It was more, as long as there's cleaning in place, and Jenna helped me out. There were 2 other factors, and
Washing hands,
the hand washing and
regular
cleaning
hand washing.
seemed to be more important. And we also looked at it as trying to, from your parent perspective, if you happen to have a child who is at the elementary level and maybe at the high school, we would want to make sure that every single family member is on the same schedule, which would be pretty hard to do. Plus, we also recognize that elementary students typically, hopefully, aren't not home alone, whereas our older students can be. And the third factor is the cohort group that the health people are telling us keep them in a smaller group. We're able to do that because we have individual teachers for classrooms, the reason for the AB schedule was to minimize the number of students crossing over into different cohort groups. So those are the three big factors as to why we didn't choose that option. What the hybrid law says, can you explain what the hybrid learning will look like? Will the class time each day or some days be in class and some be at home? So if the hybrid on-site learning, I hope I'm answering this, Erica, or answering this correctly. The hybrid is on-site unless the health department or health officials tell us otherwise. So that is why it's called hybrid, because we may have to go home and learn at a moment's notice and not know that. So that's why it's really hybrid. When it switches to hybrid, that has nothing to do with Syllabus. So Syllabus is only for students who pick remote and are remote for the whole semester. If we have to pivot to on-site and have to go home and learn for a day or a week, the classroom teacher will continue to do his or her instruction using probably Google Classroom, but it won't look like we're gonna have to do Zern and Lexia like we did last year. They will continue to do what they were doing, but they will do it in a digital format. We're encouraging all of our teachers when they come back on site to set up their classrooms so that whatever they're doing can easily be taken and continued on at home if necessary. So it's gonna look a little bit different, but hopefully does that answer the question, Erica? If it doesn't, just let me know. I'd like to know what a day would look like if the school closes. How will teachers teach lessons, and will students need to be on Zoom for an entire class? What most likely is going to look like, again, we're going to encourage teachers to do some recording, because we understand if you are choosing remote learning, then you already know you have a plan for how your student's going to be on the computer and learning. If you chose on-site, it probably means you're expecting your child to be at school. So if we have to go home, it could be like last spring where the student may not have access to just be able to learn digitally from 7:30 to 3:30. So there will be more flexibility. So we're encouraging our teachers to make sure that whatever they do can be delivered a little bit more flexibly. There may be times when they need to be on a computer to get the instructional piece. But it will have to be a little more flexible, because we know that you guys as parents, if we are pivoting, you may not be pivoting at work. So we have to make those adjustments. So I think that answers that question. Answered one. Jamie, I think I answered yours about how many people are interested. There's a question from a new parent about the parent accounts. I believe our secretaries contacted all of our new families to set up the parent accounts. If you have trouble with that, just give us a call. They will be back on Monday. So call our office on Monday, and one of our secretaries can walk you through that process. If families have a Syllabus option for learning, why would our district allow mask exemptions for students who choose to attend in person? That is something the health officials told us was something that was allowable. So they said, if you have, obviously anybody who has a mask, who's asked to wear a mask, could have a medical exemption. We're wanting them to be very rare, and the health department is saying they have to be the ones to sign off on it. So it has to go through our school nurse, and then it has to go through our health department, because obviously the first choice is, if that's the concern, we would encourage you to use the remote option, because in that situation, an unmasked student can't be within 6 feet of anybody else. So it makes for a different kind of day for the student. But as far as the allowable issues, that's something that at the school level we don't control. So that would be more of a school board saying across the district, we're not even going to allow that option. But it's something that came with the guidance from the health people. Let's see, if we choose remote learning option, would they be sitting in front of the computer, I think 6 hours a day? I think we've taken care of that one. If we do remote learning, will we still see our classmates like we did on Google Classroom? That's a good question. And I think when our teachers come back on duty, we need to talk about that possibility, because I do think we can work out, because we have digital options here, to where we could set up times where the kids who are remote might be able to Zoom into a classroom and have or do maybe some joint projects. You could do some possible group stuff digitally. So that's something we haven't put in the plan yet, but it is something we're discussing. But I'm not going to speak for teachers of how that will work, but I know that they're creative enough to make that happen. I received an email regarding Powerhouse. I was able to figure out how to register. So again, Nakinia, if you have issues, give our office a call on Monday and let the secretaries help you with that one, because that is tough if you've not used PowerSchool before. I read that Syllabus was a program to work at your own pace, so they wouldn't be tethered to a screen. I think we talked about that one. Does the hybrid learning also include a Syllabus? Should students be sent home? So no, if you are on site and we have to go home for a short period of time, we will not use the Syllabus. That will continue to be whatever the classroom teacher has planned using our Google Classroom platform. Is the Syllabus aligned to what is normally taught in school? Are the curriculums basically the same? Yes, they are. So they are both based on the same state standards. So we're pretty confident that if a student does remote learning for the entire school year, completes the coursework, checks in with the USD 348 teacher, gets reinforcement if they need it, that they'll be fine to advance to the next grade level, just like their on-site peers. Do you have tutor options? If you are in the remote option, even though a Syllabus is self-paced, and we're not asking the parent to be the teacher for a Syllabus or remote. You will have a IC teacher assigned for any sort of help or instruction or remediation. So your job as a parent for remote is simply to sign off that they're actually doing the work and on the time. And so the tutoring from a Syllabus would come from that teacher. And then of course in on-site option, you'd have your classroom teacher for those needs. And correct about the log, it is to satisfy the 1,116 hour requirement. That is why the state is asking for that log. Essentially, it's their attendance. Syllabus is only for remote learning. That is correct. Will students with IEPs be able to do remote learning? Yes. So if your child has an IEP, individualized education plan, all the federal requirements are still in place for those. So you could choose remote and still opt to have services here. We'd have to work that out with the special ed teacher. You could opt to have them all done digitally. The best advice I would give is contact our school psychologist or your child's special ed teacher. Have your IEP team meet and figure out like what's really the best thing for my kid, and then see if that's something that the team can agree to. If they do remote learning, can they start before September 9th? September 9th is a start date for both learning platforms. So whichever one you're doing, it starts September 9th. Fifth grade band, Mr. Cooper is not doing band. We just don't think that's a good idea to try to do that this year, given that it's on one of the higher risk options. And I think he needs to be able, his AB schedule needs to be able to be at the junior high and high school. Will there be an increase in homework to get the required minute expectation? For the remote learners, they will have some independent work that would be like homework. But as far as the minute expectation, that could be an option. It could also include the time they spend with the IC teacher that they're assigned to. So that would be an option. For working parents that still want to do remote learning, is that something that can be done in the evenings, or does it have to be done during the day? Again, the remote learning is up to you. The only thing is that the teacher that we're assigning will be available during normal school hours. So there is that one little caveat on the remote. When the student does their Syllabus, we're not going to control that. That's up to the family, but the access to the teacher will have to be during the school day.
And there'll be daily access with the teacher and student for remote learning.
Good. And Eric, I'm glad I answered the question right. Good. Can the desks be spread 6 feet apart to allow students' ability to not wear masks while sitting and learning in the class? Our classrooms do not have that space. So that's another reason why the mask requirement was put on there by the health department, because most buildings don't have that space. How will buses transportation be different? I can answer a little bit about this, other than I know that whether you enter the building or you enter the bus first, you have to have your temperature taken. It has to be at 100.4 or lower. I do know that for summer school, they had the kids spread out on the buses with masks on, and it worked. That was a small number of kids. I do think they are talking about doubling up or adding routes, so you're only taking a smaller number of kids. But I put in my Q&A doc there's a link to Russ Harding's email. He might be the best person to contact to get specifics on. If your kid's a bus rider, especially if they're one that's going to be on for a while, what that might look like. Remote learners have access to services. So if you are a remote learner, you still have access to, like Mrs. Bonham, our social worker. If you needed mental health services, you would contact her. She can do that stuff virtually. We could even possibly work it out where they come in, since it's a one-on-one session. But yeah, those things that you would normally access in school, you could access remotely as well. Okay, let's see. If a child is found with a fever, what will the protocol be? We'll be seeing a doctor required, COVID testing required. We cannot require anyone to get a COVID test. All we know is if your child has a fever, they have to, we will quarantine them. We have a couple rooms where they can wait. We'll need a parent or someone to come and get them. And then, at least right now, the policy is you're fever free for 24 hours without medication. And so then it's really a matter of you and the nurse and the doctor to decide what the cause of the fever would be. If there's been no risk of exposure, then maybe that's something you don't have to get tested. But we know we're going to deal with a lot of, we have kids with fevers every day. We have kids with sneezes and coughs every day. Differentiating those is going to be a challenge. Will there be extra masks at school for just in case? Yes. So we'll have some. There's a group, and if somebody knows who this is, I'd like to give them due credit. But there's a group of citizens that are sewing masks for all of the district students. So they're going to have some here. Those cloth, they're the cloth kind. But I would encourage parents to put an extra or two in the bag, take them home and wash them. But the ones we have will be disposable, one use, and they'll use it and throw it away. Let's see. What do assessments look like for remote? And Dr. Hare, correct me if I'm wrong, if you are a remote learner, they're still requiring you to take the state assessments in the spring like the students who are on site.
Yes.
So each course has its own assessment on Syllabus. So when you finish the very bottom of your list, there's an assessment. Then we will also, because we're required to by the state, give the Kansas assessment, and you'll be able to do that from home remotely, just like they would if they were in school.
Yes, we'll have to have a proctor there. So we may have some testing locations set up, but we can figure out where those would be. And maybe by April, then this will all be different and we'll be talking a different story at that time, hopefully.
Will there be work assigned for remote learning outside of a Syllabus? What could happen is you think about a normal lesson in a classroom, the teacher usually teaches for 10 or 15 minutes, and then the kids do work for a certain amount of time. A Syllabus will be like that, but the work that they complete is going to be on the program. The other stuff isn't going to be assigned. It's going to be a part of that 360 minutes. So it might be, there may not be an assignment to read for 30 minutes, but that's something that the student can do. There may not be an assignment to go walk for a neighborhood walk to get exercise, but that could count. So they won't necessarily be assigned, but they will be part of that total time. How much time do you expect to be taken out of typical instructional time to deal with safety measures at school? It struck me that the description of temperature taking in the morning could take a really long time. Washing hands, yeah. So, and one of the recommendations from the health people is to have the kids go to the bathroom during instructional time, which is the exact opposite of everything we've always taught kids about. Go to the bathroom when we come in from recess, when we are in between breaks. But the idea is to keep the crowd from being in there. So it is going to have an impact. We're having our teachers, when they come back, to make sure they're really focused on what is it that you really need to accomplish in a day? What are the critical learning tasks that need to be done? And we're going to have to adjust. We're going to have kids go outside for recess 4 times instead of 2. They'll be shorter, but there'll be more of them, so they can take masks off and run around and disengage from learning a little bit and get some exercise. So those things will have an impact. So we're relying on our wonderful teachers to be able to say, okay, here's what we can adjust. Here's how we can tweak this so that we can still get in what we need and make all these changes. For online learning, how much time will the teacher spend with each student? There will be daily contact. There's not a requirement for daily contact, and it could be different. So it might be that he or she meets with all of them for a short time, but then your child might need more time. And so they're going to be available. They are available the entire school day for remote learners. So there's an opportunity for, if a certain child needs more time, they would be able to get that. So if there's no opportunity to remove their masks in the classroom, what additional opportunities will the students have to break from their mask, interact with peers at a distance? So really, right now, the only times it comes off is at lunch, when they're eating, and when they're outside, which is why we increased the recess times a little bit more. So really, at this point, that's what we were left with as far as our restrictions.
We've had teachers ask if they could take kids outside for a lesson and do their reading or whatever outside, and that's okay. And as long as the weather holds up, we can do anything outside to get those masks off and get kids.
Yep. 6 feet apart, they can take it off outside, but not inside.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why you have to stretch out our lunch seating area, because in the current setup, they're going to be too close to be able to take them off. So we have to stretch that out a little bit. The water stations to fill the bottles, will those be sanitized after each use? Bathrooms and sinks in the classrooms. So each classroom has its own sink. The teachers will have all they need to make sure that they're sanitized whenever it's necessary. The filling station doesn't need it. It's a water, it's got a sensor. It's like a touchless sanitizer. There's nothing to touch, so there's nothing to sanitize after each wash. There's only one of those, so we're really going to rely on students to use the classroom sinks for filling water bottles. I did put in my plan we're encouraging a kid to bring a full one every morning, and if they need to refill it, then they can refill it from the classroom. My child's classroom, a member of my child's classroom or cohort group tests positive. Will they have to quarantine? That's always a tricky question, because obviously if it's a positive case, I can say yes. When it gets into those, who was it they were exposed to, that can be a little more tricky. And those are always decisions that our nurse and health department have to make, which is one of the reasons we kept the cohort as small as possible, so we don't have anybody else coming into that group who could have been infected or by someone, and then we have to close down a larger group. What are the increased recesses time? So they're going to go out 4 times. We're thinking about 10 minutes a time versus 20 minutes twice a day for those mask opportunities. Obviously, if kids have a need and teacher says it can walk them out to the door to take it off for a little bit, we're not going to discourage that. And teachers are looking for ways to get them outside as much as possible. So if they can do that, it's another opportunity to do that. Recess, we can probably, bad weather, cold weather is probably easy to deal with, because we can go outside if it's not below 20 degrees. Rain is a little bit different issue. It may just be rescheduling. It may be trying to get into the gym in smaller groups. This is one of those years we want to hope that it is a warm winter and there is no rain from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Those are the questions that are in the chat. If I did not answer yours, or I didn't answer it enough, feel free to put it back in there. Send it to me privately. You can always email. How large are classes expected to be? Again, if everybody comes back, which we know won't happen, it's going to be 22 to 24. The junior high spreading out students. The district, the junior highs are allowing them to take the masks off inside. I had not heard that. That may be something that they're working on, but that's not something I understood was a possibility for us. Will remote learners be able to check out a device? Yes, for sure. We have those available for them. Are kids going to be allowed to play in the playground equipment? Yes, we're not going to take that off limits. We do have the ability. Our custodian has a solution that he can spray on that to take care of that. We also have, when kids come back inside, they're going to be washing hands right away. So hopefully anything that's outside will be removed with hand washing. Specials, good question. So what we've done for specials, typically kids would go to 2 a day. So they might go to music and PE, and the next day they'd go to library and art. So to make that cohort group stay together, they're going to go to 1 PE, one specials class with a quarter, much like the 6th graders do at the junior high. So your class might have PE every day for the first quarter, music every day for the second quarter, art for the third quarter, and library for the fourth quarter, and then we do rotate each quarter. That allows our specials teachers to reduce the amount of cohorts that they have to see. we're increasing the amount of time between them. So if there's PE equipment that needs to be sanitized, there's time to do that. For art, kids are going to be taking their bag of materials with them so that each one will have their own. So those are the things we've done to help with specials. Does that, Trish, does that answer the question? Do you need more information than that? Thumbs up. Good. Oh, great question about library books. So remote access. So we will have the ability for those who are remote learners. There'll be a website link where you can go to and request library books. So you can request them as often as you need to, and we'll have a pickup drop off outside the front. So we'll just let you know they're ready. There'll be a box, you can pick them up, bring back the old ones, and you can exchange them like that. Don't have to walk in the building. We don't want parents to have to walk in because we don't want to inconvenience you guys with temperatures and masks, but that's a requirement for any adult who walks in. So if you just drop it off out front, so you can save yourself from that. Same thing with like lunches or anything that's forgotten. You just call us and say, I'm bringing my child's lunch, leave it in the box, we'll come get it and deliver it to them. I'm out of questions in the chat. Any others? It's kind of a moving target. I put draft on the plan on purpose because I've updated it since I sent it to you Friday. I've updated it about 3 or 4 times. As you guys come up with things that I haven't thought about, I stick those in there so that you know. We will record this, so if you have friends or neighbors or family members who want to watch it, we'll get your link up pretty quickly. I understand it's going to be a learning process. I want to make sure there are no consequences for students if they keep messing with masks and you don't keep them on. We understand it's going to take a long time to get kids in that habit. I watched the City Rec had their summer day camp here, and I watched them. After the first couple of weeks, I could hear them from my office. Hey, put the mask back on, because it's a new thing and it's difficult. I mean, I know how much it is for us as adults to keep that on when we're working. So we understand that our teachers are going to be, bless them, they're going to be taught probably saying, put your mask back on. Stop touching your mask 4 times. Obviously, if kids are doing something intentional, it would be treated like any other non-compliance with teachers. But we understand like this is going to need some practice and some training. Guys had great questions, great points. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this, very much so. This is another good, what can parents do to support success this year? We used the term last year, grace and understanding. And even though we're going into this year thinking things are going to be a little bit more robust, it's the same thing. We understand the situation you guys are in with having to juggle everything that's going on. We would ask for the same, and talking to your kids about, why it's important, why do I have to wear a mask, why it's important, and about just sticking with it. Perseverance is going to be a big thing when this is over. Having kids come through something. So it'll be, I don't know if you like the 1918, I'm sure those kids thought about what it was like in school and how they came through it. So I feel like just giving them all that praise and you can do it. The more encouragement, the better. That's probably the best thing you can do is to support your child and listen to them. And if there's things we can do, if we can get you resources, please let us know that. We know when kids come back, they're going to be all over the spectrum in terms of what kind of learning mode they're going to be in. So we're not going to start school the first day with intensive, heavy work. It's going to be, hey, what's on your mind? What are you going to do? Here's how we're going to do masks. Here's what this is going to look like. Another question, this is a good one about, they've all been good, sorry. This is an important one I hadn't addressed yet, about how will 3rd graders be introduced to the school. And typically we would have already had them over here. We would have had them take a tour. I did give them a virtual tour last year. And then normally we'd wrap that up with back to school night where they'd come into the building. So this year it's going to be a little more different. It's going to be virtual. So we'll have our teachers record something for everybody. They get here the first day in the morning. We'll have a lot of people here to escort them and help them down. So we'll make sure they all get where they need to be. It'll be a little bit different, but I always tell them when they come over here, if you did not get lost at the primary center, you'll have no trouble here because it is incredibly smaller and you really can't get lost because it's 2 straight lines and you're either in your classroom or you've ended up outside. The students will be able to check out library books throughout the year, regardless if they have library first. Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah. Whether it's in the classroom or remote, they'll check out, but they can check out books all year long. Parents walking in on the first day, really, we are not letting visitors in the building at all. I understand that's probably more of an issue for the little guys, but really, if you come in, we have to take a temperature of you and the child and masks and having additional people in here. So we're going to say we'd really appreciate it if you could do your pictures and your goodbyes outside, and then let us, once we get in, take all the kids down and getting them into class. Oh, good question about, again, they're all good, about mental health resources. So obviously we have an on-site social worker who's available. We also have a program that we use weekly called Second Step that really helps kids with their social and emotional learning. It's really more of an introductory course that talks about how to handle conflict, how to deal with emotions, how to solve problems. That's something that that particular company has provided resources specifically for COVID recovery, coming back to school. So we have those things available for our teachers to use. We start every morning with a morning meeting where kids get to talk and greet each other and say good morning and talk about things that are on their mind. So we have that available as a resource. That'll probably be our strongest one. Will kids remote learning have access to Second Step? What they will have access to, because Janet, I don't know if we've answered that question, have we?
So the plan is that the remote learning teachers can do those Second Step lessons with them as part of their daily check-in.
Yeah. Thank you.
They'll still stay on track with their peers in the classroom that are doing and we'll just stay with the same schedule of what the Second Step lesson would be for that week.
Thanks, Jen, for clarifying that. I had forgotten that. So yeah, the remote teacher will do essentially the same lesson that the classroom teacher is doing, but with the remote learners digitally. But if your remote learner needs additional support or needs some one-on-one with our social worker / counselor, that is available to you. As is any special education service that you either already have or you think you might need, you can still refer a child the same way by requesting either to me or to the teacher or to the school psychologist, I would like to have an evaluation. There's a process to go through. It's not automatic, but you still have the right as a remote learner for those. To clear up remote learning, they could do 30-minute meeting with the teacher during the day and then schoolwork at night. Correct. Yes. And although the teacher has to check in with them every day, they may not need to do there may not be any need for anything other than that. So that's really up to whatever the student's needs might be. Can you explain what Second Step is? Second Step is a social emotional curriculum for students. Who asked that question? Kelly, I can send you a link to their website. In fact, I'll put that link for all of you on the Q&A. I made a note to put that on there if you want to see what Second Step does, what some of the lessons look like. Grading system for both virtual and on-site. So the grading system for remote, and Janet, help me if I'm not wrong, that's going to be based on what Syllabus tells them, right?
Yes. So how they progress in Syllabus, and then also the additional work that they're doing with the remote learning teacher, because the computer system may not capture everything that they're doing. So
they will not have a progress report / grade card like the on-site ones will have.
No, they will. They will. And the remote learning teacher will still have parent-teacher conferences with the teacher or with the parents.
Thanks. And sorry, you guys, we're still working on some of this out. So the two of us sometimes know something that one of us knows something the other one doesn't. So I apologize if it looks like we are still sorting this out, because we are. And then the grading system for on-site, that will be very similar. We are actually switching. You're not going to see a letter grade. You're going to see a standards grade. If you remember what the primary center students did, there's a description and we're looking at in terms of my child can do this, and then what level can they do that? And we're going to send some information out to you about that. Our remote teachers teaching in-person class as well. Ours are not. So we will have a designated remote-only teacher. Where at the upper levels maybe can have an hour where they're on site and an hour where they're remote. Our teachers, if you have a class assigned to you, they're assigned to you all day. So we would not ask them to try to do double duty. If you decide to do remote learning and then decide to come back in the spring semester, then we would assign you to a class. I need to clarify that too. Like, it's a semester issue, not a year long. Again, I appreciate everybody's time. I know Dr. Hare has to jump over. The primary center, I believe, is starting at 4 o'clock. So some of you may be going ready to go to your third meeting. Again, I thank you for taking the time to come here. And as you're making your decisions, if you need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here almost every day. If you leave a message on the phone, it goes to my email. We'll get back to you. We'll get somebody who knows the answer to get your question answered. But we want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. So
Rebecca, I can't type that in there fast enough, but it's probably 20 to 30 minutes for a class session with the remote teacher. But then if your child needs additional support, then it could be more time.
Right. Correct. And that remote learning with the teacher, that could be a combination of both. It could be individual or it could be class.
Or a small group.
Or a small
really,
group.
it's we're gonna make this work. We're gonna do whatever your kids need.
All right, thanks everybody. I'm gonna have Dr. Hare go and end this so that she can move over, and we'll see you all soon. Please let us know if you have any more questions. Thank you. Thank you.